Hey there, Sandy from sandybowie.com. So this week, what I thought I'd talk about is 6 ways to get over your fear of being visible as an online entrepreneur. Because we all have times when we just want to hide, don't we? And instead of putting ourselves out there with our marketing activities, maybe we just have days that we don't feel like it at all. We just want to hide somewhere. But for some of us, this habit of hiding is what we do every day. It's constant because we're afraid of putting ourselves out there in front of other people because we don't want to be seen. Now, have you ever decided that you're going to, like tomorrow, you're going to do a Facebook Live on your Facebook page and then you just don't do it? Or decide that you're going to post in a Facebook do a video that you're going to post in a Facebook group and then you don't share it. Or maybe you write a blog post and then you just delete it. You don't actually even put it on your blog or something like that. Because for some of us, this fear that we feel about being judged by others, or maybe being criticized, or looking like, some sort of fraud, it's so powerful and so great that we're afraid to let other people see the marketing content that we actually produce. So we produce it, but we hide it somewhere. Like maybe it's hidden on your blog somewhere and you don't get a lot of traffic. I know I've been guilty of that one. Or maybe it's in your own Facebook group or something like that. It doesn't have a lot of members. Like you're actually hiding your content. You don't really want people to see it. So if that's you, if that's something that you've been guilty of doing, then this video is for you. I've got 6 tips for you today on how to get over that. So let's first of all look at tip number 1. Now, the first thing is to understand what is really driving that fear of being visible. Now, I know that in this industry we all talk about, the fear of being judged and the fear of being criticised and feeling like a fraud. But what's behind those fears? Because they're like the common ones that everyone talks about. But what is it that you're really afraid of? It's really important to know that. So for me, my deepest fear, and it's the one that I still struggle with, is that people won't like me. That's what's behind the fear. See, when I press the push button, the post button, on a post, or the publish button, when it's time to actually click on that button on any content, that's what's driving my fear. It's worrying about, well, what if people don't like the post, or what if they just completely ignore it and then I feel maybe rejected or something, or worse, what if they put a really negative comment on about it. And some days that fear has stopped me from posting anything at all. I just didn't want to be visible. I didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't want to draw attention to myself at all. And most of all, I didn't want to be seen by other people. So, and behind that, my real fear was that people wouldn't like me. So we have to understand what it is that's really driving us. Now, tip number 2, know where the fear comes from. Now, what do I mean by that? Right, here's the funny thing, right? I'm a 48-year-old woman. I don't like to admit that in public, but yeah, it's time. I just need to get over it. I'm also a mother and I'm a grandmother as well. So the idea that I'm afraid that people don't like me, it just seems a little bit silly, right? You cannot imagine a child in a playground, oh, but mummy, they don't like me at school. But when you're 48 years old, it's a bit silly to say something like that, hey? But here's the thing, right? I didn't just invent this belief yesterday, I didn't start to believe it when I became an entrepreneur. The truth is, I've always had it. It's just that it came to the surface when I was faced with doing marketing activities that I needed to do in order to get clients. Now, it took me a long while to figure this out, but in setting myself on a course where I had to do marketing, that brought up this really deep insecurity that people won't like me, along with a whole load of other stuff that came with it, because they do say that entrepreneurship is like amazing, the best thing for personal growth. So I worked with a coach and I did some deeper work to understand where this fear came from. Like, why did I develop it? Like, what was the purpose of developing it? Because I'm a great believer in, like, when we're younger, when things happen, we develop beliefs and things like that, and we develop them for a reason. There's a reason we believe these things. So I needed to find out a bit more about what that was. And once I was able to find out where it comes from and why I created it, then I could start to do, like, the healing work, for want of a better word, to help gradually dissolve this fear. And that made a big difference to me. So tip number 3, sit with your fear when it comes up. Because usually, like, we just want to run away from things we're afraid of. We want to pretend that they don't exist. We want to ignore them. Like, we might even tell ourselves little stories inside of our head and convince ourselves that we don't need to take any action. It's quite easy to do, actually. Like, I used to be able to easily convince myself that, no, today isn't the right day to do that. It's not the right day to take that action. Like, you can't do it today because, well, you're not really in the right mood, or you're tired, or like tomorrow will be a better day, you know? Whatever excuse I could find, and I believed those excuses. But when I stopped, I just stopped doing that because I realised it was a habit that I got into, and I decided to just sit with my fear when it came up. So those moments when I tried to put something off, I knew it was the fear talking. So I just take a moment and just sit and feel that fear that was in my body, the fear that I didn't want to feel before. You know, I listened to it, I heard what it had to say, and then I would respond to it with words of compassion, because that's generally what fear needs. Now, tip number 4, tap on your fear. Right, tapping is one of my absolute go-to tools when you're working on emotional stuff, especially the ones that you're trying, like, not to feel, you know, the emotions that you're trying to avoid. So by tapping on, like, energy points wherever they are around your body, like, you're tapping into the emotions that you're trying to avoid, and you're getting to the root cause of why you're feeling that way. The thing is, like, once I know what's causing how I'm feeling and what I'm feeling, then I can deal with that. You know, I can deal with the facts of that instead of being overwhelmed by the emotion of it. So tapping is one way to stop yourself being overwhelmed by the emotions, because once you get them down to a certain level, then you can start to see things a bit more clearly and see what it is that you need to do. Number 5, ask your fear what it would feel comfortable doing, right? So generally, like, when we feel fear, it's a signal that, like, we're not really comfortable taking the action that we've just decided that we want to take. So just ask your fear, okay, so you don't feel comfortable doing that. Well, what do you want to do instead? Like, imagine sitting down and having a conversation with your fear. Like, you can imagine that your fear looks and sounds like another version of you, or maybe something else completely differently. So you could imagine that your fear is like the Cowardly Lion from the Wizard of Oz or something like that. And just sit and ask it, like during a meditation or some quiet time. What action would it feel comfortable taking? And then just do that. Like, you'll be surprised at what comes up when you actually sit down and basically have a conversation with your fear. So for example, like, I feel more comfortable running Facebook ads and getting people onto my email list and talking to them that way than I do posting in other people's Facebook groups. So that's what I do. I play to my strengths. And this leads me on to number 6, actually, my final tip. And that is like to rate your fears on all of the marketing activities that you think you need to conduct, and then work only on your strengths. So this is something that I do with my clients, and like it follows on, like I say, from the previous tip. To me, there's too many coaches out there that are telling us that there's only like one way, there's only one way to do things. Like if we want to get clients, we need to join Facebook groups. We need to post regularly in social media and, you know, try and get people on the phone, like for discovery calls, things like that. But what if you don't actually want to do any of that? Does that mean that you're stuffed? You can't get any clients? Well, I'll tell you what. Years ago, right, I worked with a coach, and she insisted that I joined local networking groups for women, you know, and invite myself along, you know, go meet people and do talks, because that was how she was convinced, like that was the best way to get clients. You just, you know, randomly get clients, go to, you know, follow up, all of that sort of stuff. And I know a lot of people do things like that, right? But the funny thing is, like, what she didn't know and she didn't understand is the truth of the matter is that I would rather stick needles, yes, needles, in my eye than go to networking meetings, because I hate them. I hate them with a passion. In fact, I'll tell you the truth, and this is like really strange, but I once hid in the ladies' toilets in a networking meeting because I found the whole thing just too overwhelming. So I didn't know what else to do, and I panicked. I went and hid in the toilets. I was scared to come back out again. Like, the thing is, I'm an introvert, and I'm not just a little bit of an introvert, I'm quite, you know, extreme on being an introvert, and I'm also a little bit shy. And I still, at the age of 48, suffer from social anxiety. So why on earth would I want to go to a networking group? It's like the worst nightmare. It really is my worst nightmare possible situation to go into. I can't stand walking into rooms full of people that I don't know. It's just awful, and it brings out all my insecurities doing something like that. So hey, why would I want to do that? Indeed, but here's what I did instead, right? I made up a list of all of the different marketing activities, everything that I could figure out that I could use ways to market my business, right? And then I also wrote out a list of all my strengths. And then I rated each one of these marketing activities. I rated them against my strengths and also against my fears. And I worked out from there which ones I would follow through on consistently. Because there's no point, like this lady was trying to do to me, there's no point in drawing up a marketing action plan that's full of activities that you actually don't want to do. Like, and then you try and force yourself to do them. And then you say things like, well, what's wrong with me? Why don't I want to do this? Right, it's not about overcoming your fears. It's not about overcoming, you know, things that you don't want to do. It's about playing to your strengths, because let's be honest, life is really too short. There's so many different ways to get out there and achieve your goal and be visible and do your marketing. You just do not need to do stuff that really scares you that much, to the level where you have to go and hide in the ladies' toilets. Okay, so that's my 6 tips for, you know, getting out there, you know, sort of 6 ways to look at differently, to look at your fears. And one final thing that I will say, there is another way. You could book a fear busting session with me. It's a really simple and strategic session to look at what is really holding you back here, and then how are you going to work with that? Because for me, it's not about overcoming your fears, it's about understanding them, and it's about working in a different way to play to your strengths instead. So I hope you find this really useful. Let me know in the comments box below anything that comes up for you. I'd be delighted to hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.